Thank you all very much. Thank you, Matthew. You are indeed a great dear friend. For those of you who don't know, Matthew is also a very distinguished business leader in Israel. And tomorrow he's assuming the position of the chairman of the Board of Trustees of the American Jewish Committee. So we wish him great luck. I want to commend the leadership of the American Jewish Committee. I want to say thank you to our good and dear friend Stanley Bergman for his great service to the AJC, and to welcome the incoming president, John Shapiro. Wish you well. Our good friend is David Harris, who is the stalwart of the American Jewish Committee for so many years. And you have a great office in Israel led by Lieutenant Colonel Avital Leibovich. We wish her luck as well. This organization has been serving the Jewish people and the vision of Zionism for well over 110 years. It's been a prominent actor in so many scenes throughout Jewish history for the last century, fighting anti-Semitism, striving for homeland for the Jewish people, and of course combating BDS. I was very moved by what I've seen together with you, and all I wanted is to give a big hug to these wonderful students for being so bold. And I have family connections to the organization. My late grandfather, Rabbi Isaac Herzog, was the first chief rabbi of Israel. He was the first Herzog to speak for the AJC. And thereafter, my late father, Chaim Herzog, who was Israel's sixth president. My late uncle, Abba Iban, who was a legendary Israeli foreign minister. And so many others. So I'm extremely, extremely happy and proud to be here with you today. 2017 will be a unique year. Israel will mark a few major milestones. The first one will be 100 years to the Balfour Declaration, which recognized the right of the Jewish people to a national home in their historical homeland. We will also mark 70 years to the UN partition plan, the famous 29 November 47 UN resolution, in which it was resolved that the only way to secure the collective future of Jews and Arabs in the region was to create two national homelands, one for the Jewish people and one for what they called then an Arab state, clearly a Palestinian state. It will also be a century for the Six-Day War, the liberation of Jerusalem, our eternal capital, an occasion which no international forum can ever deny, including UNESCO, and no resolution and no falsification of history will ever break the eternal bond between the Jewish people and Jerusalem. On this anniversary, we will also reflect on the aftermath of that war, which continues to affect our lives till today. While for some, clearly it was the moment of unification and coming home, for others, it was determined to be the occupation. And I say that this simply will be a time for national introspection and soul-searching. And I say that it must serve as a wake-up call and a wake-up moment, that Israel must now take its fate into its own hands and shape its own future. Whilst we truly have a remarkable, wonderful state, our beloved state of Israel, and I don't need to go and explain to each and every one of you why it's so unique and wonderful, it is clear that a lack of progress in separating from the Palestinians presents a serious demographic threat to our future. Gradually, we are finding ourselves dragged towards a binational disaster. In the meanwhile, violence continues to flourish, the delegitimization of Israel gathers steam, and the international community grows increasingly irritated by what's going on in the West Bank. We are therefore seeing looming threats on the horizon. Cumulatively, these threats may leave Israel bruised, weakened, or isolated at times of great strategic sensitivity, when possible military confrontations, God forbid, may erupt again in Gaza or in Lebanon, and of course when there's a speeding up of the BDS activities all over the globe. Though the role of the opposition leader in Israel is at times frustrating, perhaps most times it's frustrating, this does not weaken me nor quell my desire to change the situation we find ourselves in. Neither my partner in the Zionist Union, Tzipi Livni, nor myself have given up on our ambition to create the new route our nation so desperately needs and lead it forward. The past year was very difficult for Israelis, as terror ensued again. Last January, I attended a funeral of another casualty, the funeral of Daphna Meir, a truly extraordinary woman, a mother of 4 children, and a foster mother of 2 more. Daphna was brutally murdered, defending her children from a 17-year-old Palestinian coming into her home with a knife. He just finished having dinner in a nearby village, crossed the valley, and killed her. At this funeral, something broke in me. It reiterated my conviction that Israel must not continue on this path, that we must choose action, that we must cease to jeopardize our future. It would have been easier for me to do nothing and to give the government its way, showing the people that it is failing. But the cost of inaction and its failure is that our children will be paying. And so I asked myself, why aren't we acting? What prevents us? What does Israel wait for? Other initiatives of elements and nations who don't really care for our most inherent interests? So in recent months, and in the context of this wave of terror, in which dozens of Israelis were killed and hundreds wounded, and in the midst of a national sense of futility, I identified a moment or a different course and an opportunity for real change in the shape of a unique regional opportunity for progress and peace. I worked on it with global and regional leaders and experts, directly and indirectly, as others have done as well, others meaning independent leaders of nations and activists throughout who have advocated the same opportunity. While the idea of cooperating with moderate Arab countries and leaders had long been discussed, it appears that this has now come to fruition. The notion that a group of moderate Arab nations were willing to engage in a process with Israel marks a unique opportunity. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, a bold leader who plays an enormous role in calming the region and quelling extremism, in particular with his most recent statement, a speech which he spoke to his own people just recently, in a very historical speech which he delivered, explains it all. This was a glimpse, a small but dramatic glimpse of what I'm talking about. It is not only Egypt, but also countries such as Jordan, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Morocco, Kuwait, Bahrain, and others that are the potential partners, together, by the way, with the Palestinian Authority, to recognize the stabilizing force that Israel can play in the region and take part in this initiative. Unlike the previous generation of Arab leaders, today many Sunni Arab leaders suffer less from what I call the Israel complex of their predecessors. They are bolder, younger, more independent, and willing to work with Israel so long as it serves their own national best interests. These leaders are prepared to address what is important for both sides, to back the national aspirations of the Palestinians and recognize the security concerns and needs of Israel. These moderate Arab states are grouping into something of an informal Sunni Arab version of a regional NATO, which identifies the same threats that Israel identifies. A new configuration that has evolved and emerged in front of our eyes, especially following the deal with Iran, in order to tackle, actually, the spread of hatred and violence in the region. This is an alliance threatened by Iran, which continues supporting and exporting terror all over the region, and is threatened by ISIS, which continues brutally ravaging the region and is a key threat to world peace. In fact, the United States, by forming the coalition against ISIS, has also identified some of the issues which I'm discussing. These countries see diplomatic and security coordination with Israel as a potentially positive development. But for them, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict requires a solution, or at least some substantial progress, as a condition for upgrading these relations. They demand that Israel and the Palestinians take steps on the ground and be part of the process, and they wish to bring the parties together to the negotiating table. Israel, on its part, needs to carry out certain steps which were never taken before on the ground for the purpose of confidence building and easing pressure on the daily lives of Palestinians. For this, and here enters Israeli politics, there needs to be a more moderate, centrist Israeli government with a policy that would allow the progress of a regional initiative, and it is essential in order to see this plan come to fruition. And so, in recent weeks, I chose to risk my own political standing and reach out to my opposing political leader, whom I ran against last year, in an attempt to change the future facing our children. I opened the door to Benjamin Netanyahu, my political rival, in order to face together the threats to our nation, and we discussed the possibility of forming a national unity government. Unfortunately, that effort failed, and he finally chose to unite with the extreme right in the political system in Israel and to cooperate with these elements who continue to threaten the fabric of our society and our potential to realize true long-term security and peace that are so essential to the well-being of Israel. While many previous attempts for peace have failed, the paradigm is now changing in the region, and the opportunity looks increasingly possible. These Arab countries want to see Israel and the Palestinians come to a resolution as part of their own agenda and have a direct incentive to build confidence and push the Palestinians and the Israelis towards compromise based on the spirits and elements of the Arab Peace Initiative. Whilst I welcome the recent comments of Prime Minister Netanyahu and Defense Minister Lieberman on the Arab Peace Initiative. What we need now to see are deeds and not just words. The lessons of history have taught us that there is not enough trust between the Israelis and Palestinians to negotiate alone and reach an agreement at this present moment. Definitely not under the current political systems and leadership. In Camp David, in the summit in Camp David in the year 2000, when Arab countries in the region chose not to participate and left the Palestinian and the Israeli leaders alone, it was destined for failure. In the recent Paris conference, which was aimed towards pushing for the two-state solution, there was a common theme among the speakers, one after another, and you will hear it today again, I'm sure, by the Foreign Minister of the European Union. Each spoke about the importance of the regional players and the opportunity of the region. And for this reason, the inclusion of the Sunni Arab powers that have direct vested interest in seeing a resolution of the conflict, participating under a regional umbrella, represents a real hope. So let's do it. My friends, dear friends, as I mentioned, and I reiterate, today there is a golden opportunity which the United States should lead and which the international community should support with no reservations. With brave and bold leadership, we can grasp this opportunity and create a better future for us all, for the nations of the region, and for the children of all people. Me and my partners at the Zionist Union will continue all efforts to try yet again to implement the two-state solution and get it through this unique opportunity. We will continue to strive to change the vicious cycle of history and lead Israel and the region to a different and better course together with our regional partners. And let me say finally, together with all of you, dear delegates and guests, allow me to extend my very best wishes to Muslims throughout the world, especially in Israel and the Middle East, at the start of the month of Ramadan, with the traditional wish Ramadan Kareem, together with prayers for peace and hope for all peoples of the region, and especially between Israelis and Palestinians. Thank you all very much.